Tomato sauce is supposed to be tomatoes, vinegar, and spices. Simple condiment stuff. But what if I told you that some of Australia's most popular tomato sauce brands contain more sugar per 100 millilitres than Coca-Cola? Use modified starch thickeners because there aren't enough actual tomatoes to create proper consistency. And rely on artificial flavours and caramel colour to make sauce from tomato paste and water taste, and look like it's made from real tomatoes. That bottle in your fridge right now might be closer to liquid candy than actual tomato sauce. I've spent weeks analysing nutritional panels, ingredient lists, and Food Standards Australia-New Zealand documentation on condiment labelling. I've reviewed independent testing, examined processing methods, and looked at what food scientists say about industrial tomato sauce production. The findings are concerning. Here are 5 tomato sauce brands you should avoid and 2 Australian alternatives that actually deliver what they promise. Number 1. Fountain tomato sauce. Fountain is one of Australia's oldest and most recognised tomato sauce brands, with market presence stretching back over a century. For many Australians, Fountain practically defines what tomato sauce is. The iconic squeeze bottle, the bright red colour, the familiar taste. It's deeply embedded in Australian food culture. That cultural dominance makes Fountain the most important brand to examine critically, because the gap between what the brand represents and what independent analysis reveals is where this category's problems become clearest. The sugar content of Fountain tomato sauce is approximately 27 grams per 100 millilitres. To put that in context, Coca-Cola contains approximately 10.6 grams of sugar per 100 millilitres. Fountain tomato sauce contains more than 2.5 times the sugar concentration of Coke. A typical serving of tomato sauce on a meat pie or sausage is approximately 20 millilitres, which delivers 5.4 grams of sugar. That's more than 1 teaspoon of sugar per serve, from what most Australians consider a savoury condiment. The World Health Organization recommends limiting free sugars to no more than 10% of total daily energy intake, preferably 5%. For an average adult, that's approximately 50 grams daily maximum, ideally 25 grams. 3 serves of Fountain tomato sauce delivers 16 grams of sugar, which is 32% of the ideal daily maximum, or 64% of the ideal target, from a condiment. The ingredient list reveals why the sugar content is so extreme. Fountain contains tomatoes, sugar, vinegar, salt, and food acid. The tomatoes listed are tomato paste, which is concentrated tomato solids, reconstituted with water during production. The sugar appears second in the ingredient list, indicating by weight there is more added sugar than any other ingredient except the reconstituted tomato paste. Traditional tomato sauce recipes derive sweetness primarily from tomatoes themselves, with small amounts of added sugar to balance acidity. The extreme sugar content in Fountain indicates a formulation where sugar is a primary ingredient doing flavour work that tomato quality and quantity should be doing. The colour of Fountain is achieved partly through the tomatoes, but also through the concentration of tomato paste and potentially through processing that intensifies red colour. The extremely bright, uniform red of Fountain does not occur naturally in tomato products without careful ingredient selection and processing control designed to achieve that specific visual result. Fountain retails at Woolworths and Coles for approximately $4 to $6 per 500 millilitre bottle. That's $8 to $12 per litre for a product that is more than 1/4 sugar by weight. Uses reconstituted tomato paste rather than whole tomatoes, and delivers sugar concentrations exceeding soft drinks while being consumed as a savoury food accompaniment. Consumer research shows most Australians have no idea tomato sauce contains this much sugar. The savoury consumption context, the vegetable association with tomatoes, and decades of cultural familiarity have created a perception that tomato sauce is a relatively benign condiment choice. Independent nutritional analysis reveals that perception is not supported by the sugar content reality. Number 2. Masterfoods tomato sauce. Masterfoods is owned by Mars Incorporated and represents one of the major multinational competitors to Fountain in the Australian tomato sauce market. The brand is sold at Woolworths, Coles, and independent supermarkets with market positioning that emphasizes quality and flavor. The expectation is that Masterfood represents a premium alternative to budget options. Independent analysis reveals that Masterfood's tomato sauce contains approximately 25 to 26 grams of sugar per 100 milliliters. This is marginally lower than Fountain, but still more than double the sugar concentration of Coca-Cola. The sugar content remains extreme regardless of the slight reduction compared to the market leader. The ingredient list shows tomatoes from paste, sugar, vinegar, salt, onion powder, and spice extracts. The tomatoes are reconstituted paste rather than whole tomatoes. The sugar appears second, indicating it is the second largest ingredient by weight. They provide consistent spice flavor across large production batches without the variability and cost of whole spices. While not harmful, they represent a processing approach focused on consistency and cost control, rather than on ingredient quality. The acidity in Masterfoods is balanced through added sugar, rather than through high-quality tomatoes with natural sweetness. Traditional tomato sauce achieves sweet-tart balance through tomato selection and cooking technique. The extreme sugar addition in Masterfoods indicates that balance is achieved through formulation chemistry, rather than ingredient quality. Masterfoods retails at Woolworths and Coles for approximately $4 to $6 per 500 milliliters, comparable to Fountain. The pricing reflects similar market positioning and manufacturing economics. The multinational ownership means production is optimized for global efficiency, rather than specifically for Australian consumer preferences or quality standards beyond regulatory minimums. Consumer taste testing consistently shows that Australians cannot reliably distinguish between Fountain and Masterfoods in blind tests, suggesting the formulations are functionally identical, despite different corporate ownership. The sugar levels, tomato paste base, and flavor profiles are sufficiently similar that brand loyalty, rather than actual taste preference, drives most purchase decisions. Number 3. Heinz Tomato Ketchup. Heinz has a specific position in the Australian condiment market as the American-style alternative to Australian tomato sauce. While technically a different product category, ketchup is used interchangeably with tomato sauce by many Australian consumers. And Heinz's market dominance in the category warrants examination. Heinz tomato ketchup contains approximately 22 to 24 grams of sugar per 100 grams. This is slightly lower than Fountain and Masterfoods, but still represents extreme sugar content for a savory condiment. The reduction reflects American ketchup formulation traditions, which are marginally less sweet than Australian tomato sauce, though the difference is small in absolute terms. The ingredient list shows tomatoes, sugar, vinegar, salt, and natural flavorings. The tomatoes are from concentrate, meaning tomato paste reconstituted with water. The sugar appears second in the ingredient hierarchy. The natural flavorings are undisclosed flavor compounds derived from natural sources, but processed and concentrated to provide consistent taste. Food standards regulations permit natural flavorings to be listed without specific disclosure of what plant or spice sources they derive from. This creates limited transparency for consumers about what is actually providing the ketchup's characteristic taste beyond tomatoes and sugar. Heinz's global production scale means the tomatoes used are sourced from wherever production costs are lowest within Heinz's supply chain, which spans multiple countries. The tomato quality is sufficient to meet food safety standards, but is optimized for processing efficiency and cost, rather than for flavor quality that premium ingredient tomato sauce would deliver. The thickness of Heinz ketchup is achieved through tomato solids concentration and through the specific blend of tomato paste and added sugar. No modified starch is declared in the ingredient list, which differentiates Heinz from some cheaper alternatives that use starch to achieve thickness with less tomato content. Heinz tomato ketchup retails at Woolworths and Coles for approximately $4 to $7 per 500 milliliters, depending on sales and pack sizes. The Heinz premium over Australian tomato sauce brands reflects the American import positioning and the Heinz brand authority built over more than a century. But the sugar content remains problematic, regardless of brand heritage. Number 4. Coles tomato sauce. Coles home brand tomato sauce represents the budget end of the market, positioned as the value alternative to branded options, like Fountain or Masterfoods. The expectation with home brand products is lower cost in exchange for basic quality meeting regulatory minimums. Coles tomato sauce delivers on that expectation in ways that reveal what those regulatory minimums actually permit. Coles tomato sauce contains approximately 24 to 26 grams of sugar per 100 milliliters. This is comparable to branded alternatives, indicating that extreme sugar content is not premium brand practice, but industry standard across all price points. The home brand formulation uses the same sugar-heavy approach as products costing significantly more. The ingredient list shows tomato paste, sugar, vinegar, salt, and thickener. 1442. The presence of thickener. 1442, which is hydroxypropyl distarch phosphate, indicates the sauce uses modified starch to achieve thickness and body that insufficient tomato content would otherwise fail to provide. This is a cost reduction measure, allowing the manufacturer to use less tomato paste while maintaining sauce consistency through starch gelatinization. Modified starch creates texture through water absorption and gel formation, rather than through actual tomato solids. The mouthfeel is different from proper tomato reduction, described by food scientists as slippery or gummy, rather than the smooth richness of tomato-based thickness. Consumer reviews of Coles tomato sauce frequently mention a texture difference from premium brands, confirming the modified starch effect. The tomato content in Coles sauce is not declared as a percentage on the packaging. The presence of modified starch and the budget pricing suggest tomato content is at the lower end of what the formulation permits, while still legally qualifying as tomato sauce under Australian food standards. The colour of Coles tomato sauce is achieved through tomato paste concentration, but may also use caramel colour or other permitted colour additives to achieve the bright red consumers expect. The ingredient list doesn't explicitly declare added colour, but food standards permit certain colouring agents that may not require individual declaration if used below specific thresholds. Coles tomato sauce retails for approximately $2 to $3 per 500 millilitres. The budget pricing is honest, and the modified starch use reflects the economics of hitting that price point. The question is whether paying $1 to $2 more for branded alternatives delivers meaningful quality improvement, which ingredient analysis suggests it often does not, with sugar content remaining extreme across all price tiers. Number 5. Woolworths tomato sauce. Woolworths home brand tomato sauce follows the same pattern as Coles, positioned as budget alternative to branded sauces. The formulation reflects minimum standard compliance with cost optimization throughout the ingredient selection and processing approach. Woolworths tomato sauce contains approximately 25 to 27 grams of sugar per 100 milliliters. This is at the higher end of the category range, comparable to Fountain and exceeding Masterfoods. The Woolworths home brand is not formulated to undercut premium brands on sugar content, only on price, with sugar used aggressively to achieve palatability despite budget ingredient quality. The ingredient list shows tomato paste, sugar, vinegar, salt, thickener 1422, and natural flavour. Thickener 1422 is acetylated distarch adipate, another modified starch that provides viscosity and stability, with less tomato content than traditional sauce would require. The dual role of cost reduction and shelf stability makes modified starch standard in budget tomato sauce formulations. Natural flavour is listed without specification, indicating flavour compounds from undisclosed natural sources used to boost taste perception beyond what the tomato paste and sugar provide. This is standard practice in budget formulations where ingredient quality doesn't deliver sufficient flavour depth independently. The sodium content in Woolworths tomato sauce is approximately 1,000 to 1,200 milligrams per 100 milliliters. A 20 milliliter serving delivers 200 to 240 milligrams of sodium, which is approximately 10% of maximum daily intake. Combined with the 5.4 grams of sugar per serve, Woolworths tomato sauce delivers both excessive sugar and significant sodium from what consumers treat as a minor condiment addition. Woolworths tomato sauce retails for approximately $2 to $3 per 500 millilitres. Like Coles, the budget positioning is transparent, but the sugar content remains as extreme as products costing double the price, with modified starch differentiating the formulation through cost reduction rather than through health improvement. So, what should you actually be buying? After examining these tomato sauce brands where sugar content exceeds soft drinks, modified starch replaces adequate tomato content, and sodium levels are extreme, here are two Australian options that deliver genuinely better formulations with real tomato content and controlled sugar levels. Number 1. Spiral Foods Organic Tomato Sauce. Spiral Foods is an Australian organic food company based in New South Wales that produces a range of organic condiments, including tomato sauce. The brand is available at independent health food retailers, some Woolworths stores, and increasingly through online organic food suppliers. Independent analysis confirms Spiral Foods organic tomato sauce represents a fundamentally different formulation approach from conventional tomato sauces. Tomato sauce contains approximately 13 to 15 grams of sugar per 100 milliliters. This is roughly half the sugar content of Fountain and Master Foods. A 20 milliliter serving delivers approximately 2.6 to 3 grams of sugar, compared to 5.4 grams in conventional sauce. The sugar reduction is achieved through using organic tomatoes with natural sweetness and less added sugar, rather than through artificial sweeteners or sugar substitutes. The ingredient list shows organic tomatoes, organic raw sugar, organic vinegar, sea salt, and organic spices. The tomatoes listed are whole organic tomatoes rather than reconstituted paste, indicating higher tomato quality and more expensive ingredients throughout. The organic certification requires the tomatoes be grown without synthetic pesticides or fertilizers, which appeals to consumers concerned about agricultural chemical residues. The organic raw sugar provides sweetness with marginally better mineral retention than refined white sugar, though the health difference is modest. The more significant improvement is the reduced total quantity of added sugar compared to conventional sauces. The formulation achieves sweet-tart balance through tomato quality and spice selection, rather than through overwhelming added sugar. The spice content is whole organic spices rather than spice extracts, providing more complex flavor than the synthetic or extracted flavors in conventional sauces. The ingredient cost is substantially higher for whole organic spices versus extracts, which is reflected in the retail price but delivers authentic flavor complexity. The consistency of Spiral Foods sauce is thinner than conventional sauces, reflecting the absence of modified starch thickeners. The texture comes from actual tomato content rather than from starch gelatinization. Some consumers find the thinner texture less appealing initially, but food scientists note it more accurately reflects traditional tomato sauce consistency before the industry moved to starch-thickened formulations. Spiral Foods organic tomato sauce retails at health food stores and select Woolworths locations for approximately $7 to $9 per 500 milliliters. This is a 50 to 100% premium over conventional tomato sauce. But independent value analysis suggests the premium is justified by organic certification, substantially reduced sugar content, whole organic tomatoes rather than reconstituted paste, and the absence of modified starch and artificial flavors. The sodium content is approximately 600 to 700 milligrams per 100 milliliters, which is 30 to 40% lower than conventional tomato sauces. A 20 milliliter serving delivers approximately 120 to 140 milligrams of sodium, which is meaningfully lower than the 200 to 240 milligrams in standard sauces, while remaining sufficient to provide savory balance. Number 2. Kehoes Kitchen Tomato Sauce. Kehoes Kitchen is a small Australian condiment producer based in Victoria, that has built a reputation for genuinely artisanal tomato sauce made with whole fresh tomatoes and traditional cooking methods. The brand is available at farmers markets, independent retailers in Victoria and New South Wales, and through online specialty food suppliers. Independent analysis confirms Kehoes represents the closest approximation to traditional homemade tomato sauce available commercially in Australia. Kehoes Kitchen tomato sauce contains approximately 10 to 12 grams of sugar per 100 millilitres. This is less than half the sugar content of mainstream brands and approaches the sugar level of genuinely traditional tomato sauce, where sweetness comes primarily from tomatoes themselves with minimal added sugar. A 20 milliliter serving delivers approximately 2 to 2.4 grams of sugar, which is less than half a teaspoon compared to more than a full teaspoon in conventional sauces. The ingredient list shows tomatoes, organic cane sugar, apple cider vinegar, onions, garlic, sea salt, and spices including cloves and cinnamon. The tomatoes are whole fresh tomatoes sourced from Victorian growers during tomato season and processed immediately, providing tomato quality that reconstituted paste cannot match. The fresh tomato base creates depth of flavour that allows dramatic sugar reduction without sacrificing palatability. The apple cider vinegar provides acidity with more complex flavour than distilled white vinegar used in conventional sauces. The onions and garlic are whole vegetables cooked into the sauce rather than powders or extracts, adding vegetable sweetness and umami that reduces the need for added sugar and salt. The traditional spice blend, including cloves and cinnamon, provides warmth and complexity that most commercial sauces lack entirely. The cooking process for Kehoes sauce involves slow reduction of fresh tomatoes with aromatics and spices over several hours, creating concentrated tomato flavour through evaporation, rather than through starting with concentrated paste. This is labour-intensive and expensive, but produces flavour that industrial production cannot replicate. The texture of Kehoes sauce is substantially different from commercial sauces. Thicker and more rustic, with visible tomato pieces and spice particles. There is no modified starch, so the consistency comes entirely from tomato solids and cooking reduction. The appearance is less uniform than commercial sauces, with colour variation and texture that reflects real food rather than industrial standardization. Kehoes Kitchen tomato sauce retails at farmers markets, specialty retailers, and online for approximately $12 to $16 per 500 milliliter bottle. This is a substantial premium over commercial sauces. But the formulation is fundamentally different, using fresh whole tomatoes, slow cooking methods, and minimal added sugar. For consumers who want tomato sauce that actually tastes like tomatoes rather than sugar, the premium reflects genuine production cost differences rather than brand positioning. The sodium content is approximately 450 to 550 milligrams per 100 milliliters, which is 50% lower than many conventional sauces. A 20 milliliter serving delivers approximately 90 to 110 milligrams of sodium, meaningfully lower than standard products, while providing sufficient savory balance through the umami from slow-cooked tomatoes, onions, and garlic. The Australian tomato sauce market reveals an industry where extreme sugar content has become standard across all price points, with sugar levels exceeding soft drinks being normal for products consumed as savoury condiments. Modified starch thickeners compensate for insufficient tomato content, and reconstituted tomato paste replaces whole fresh tomatoes to reduce costs. The result is products that bear little resemblance to traditional tomato sauce, while the familiar branding and cultural associations obscure how far formulations have drifted from what tomato sauce historically was. You now understand what you're actually squeezing onto your meat pie or sausage at the footy. If this video changed how you see tomato sauce, give it a like, and share it with people drowning their food in what's basically liquid sugar. Subscribe so you don't miss the next investigation, and hit that notification bell. Drop a comment telling me which sauce you've been using and whether learning it contains more sugar than Coke changes your next purchase. I read every comment.